So the moment you find out you're pregnant, you should hug yourself very, very tightly. Because that person, you're never going to see her ever again. You'll remember her lovingly, but she's gone. Have you ever seen how gold is extracted from rock? First, it's jackhammered out of the depths of Middle Earth. Then it's shot up a shaft, and not a nice lift like the ones with mirrors we see on TikTok. No, a freaking mine shaft. Then it's put in a furnace where the gold loses all its form, and then only the gold, beautiful pure gold, emerges. Motherhood is no different. First it's the pregnancy, then the toddlers, and then you have tiny humans with zero logic and strong personalities. But one day you realize the dust has settled and something shifted. When fear, shame, and public humiliation has lost its power over you, you emerge stronger, bolder, and unstoppable. Someone once told me there's nothing more powerful than a woman in her 40s, and at the time I had no idea what she was saying. But now, with a little more life behind me, it makes so much sense. And that transformation is what we'll be chatting about today. I'm your host, Madge, and this is Moments. Joining me today is Celeste Meyburgh. Welcome, Celeste. Celeste is a registered counselor, a psychometrist, and an Enneagram practitioner who guides transformation and getting to know yourself on a deeper level. She creates spaces like True Color Community and New Leaf Retreat, where she helps people break free from the energy-draining patterns and lead lives with more joy and more fulfillment. Now, Celeste, if that's not what we all need, I don't know what is.
True, sign me up.
Yes, please. Can you give us a breakdown on the different Enneagram types and focus on the strengths rather than the struggles?
Yeah, so the Enneagram is this framework of personality that shows us how we have developed certain patterns that helped us survive since we were children. Okay, so type 1s are also known as the perfectionists. They are integrity-driven, dedicated, reliable people. And they are driven by this need to be good people, to live right. And as parents, they are excellent at doing everything really well, whether it's improving the school bake sale or the entire world. They're just really good at making things better. Type 2s are also known as the giving helpers. They are warm and nurturing and compassionate humans. They are driven by a need to be loved and to be needed, so they make themselves indispensable, great mothers. So if you have a type 2 parent as your class rep, they'll make sure your teacher gets the best gifts every year.
Okay, I've seen them.
Yes, we all know them. And then type 3s are known as the achievers. They are productivity-driven, goal-oriented, high energy, high efficiency people. And they are driven by a need to look and be successful. So they are the queen of the color-coded calendars, and they have, they inspire their children and possibly the rest of us to reach heights higher than we ever imagined. Okay, so type 4s, also known as the individualists or the creative types, they are very romantic and deeply empathic and attuned to their own emotions and the people around them. And they have this need to be both understood, but also to stand out and be unique. And they'll probably make great podcast guests because they'll journal through their mom journey and they'll write beautiful books or create beautiful stories about their inner experience of life. Type 5s are known as the observers. They are quite private and rational, analytical, very intelligent. They're driven by this need to know things. And they're usually 3 Google searches ahead of any parenting dilemma.
Okay.
Our type 6s are the loyalists or loyal skeptics. They are very warm, witty. They are well prepared for anything that could go wrong and very practical. So they're driven by this need to think of worst case scenarios and prepare for them. So they're the mom who will probably have her first aid kit in her handbag. Then we have type 7s. So type 7s are known as the enthusiasts. They are high energy, playful, adventurous. They want to experience as much as possible of life, and they expose their children to a large variety of things. They're driven by this need to be happy and to avoid pain. So type 7s can turn any boring thing like grocery shopping into an adventure with their kids. So type 8s are our challengers. They are dynamic and action-oriented and fierce and protective, and they are driven by this need to be independent and strong and avoid vulnerability, and they help their children to become independent and strong, contributing citizens of society. And then lastly we have type 9s, our peacekeepers or peacemakers. Type 9s are easygoing, very likable and warm, and they are driven by this need to avoid conflict. So they try to instill harmony wherever they go. And they're the ones who are able to dismantle a sibling rivalry and World War III just before breakfast.
Wow, I wish I was type 9.
Yeah, we all need some peace. I'm married to a 9, so that helps.
Oh,
yeah.
Clever. That worked out well
Made
for
good
you.
life decisions.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sure our listeners are already seeing themselves in what you've said, and it's fascinating. So by knowing our type is not about labeling ourselves, it's about knowing ourselves. But when are we ready to go that deep?
Honestly, I think it's just when you get tired of your own shit.
Okay, that makes complete sense.
It's when we realize that, how many times do I want to make the same mistake and repeat the same cycle, that you start questioning things and start thinking about being differently in the world. And I think that's when that self-awareness kicks in, where you realize that the way I've been playing is not actually contributing to my life anymore. It's not making things better. What needs to change? Who do I want to be?
That makes so much sense. So by knowing your personality better, you can better guide your family as well as your career.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
And by knowing your Enneagram type, it can be used for personal motivation and growth.
Yes, absolutely. So your Enneagram type is not meant to label you and put you in a box, right? It's a very dynamic system, and your type is linked to 4 other types on the Enneagram symbol. So in Enneagram world, we talk about your wings, the 2 numbers right next to you, and your lines, the 2 numbers at the end of the lines.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so you're not just your number, and I always encourage people to please not identify with that number. It's actually telling you what you're not. It's telling you how you're stuck. So it gives you this map for your personal evolution to incorporate a little bit more of those other types that you are linked to, because you already have access to them, and then to start working on those aspects of yourself to get you unstuck. So for example, a type 7 mom is very positive and enthusiastic and energized to do whatever looks interesting in the moment. But she may not be very good at routines, bedtime routines, lunchtime routines, or structure. And as we know, a child needs structure to feel safe and secure. So what the 7 can do is go to borrow from the 1. There's a line from the 7 to the 1. So the 1 is almost the polar opposite of the 7. 1s are very good with structure and routine, and they have very high standards. So where the 7 can borrow from that is to implement some of that structure, implement some of that routine to help them to free up time to then guilt-free enjoy some playtime or free time for themselves. And the 1 can go to the 7 again to relax a bit and not become so rigid in their standards and expectations, and incorporate play into their daily routines and structures. So in that way we grow, we get out of our own way and out of our own 1 perspective of doing things and incorporate a bit of the other numbers that, associated or linked to our number, and in that way we continue to evolve as humans and as moms.
That is so true, because I've also noticed that with different friends or colleagues and even my children, how different personalities actually inspire you to evolve into this new side of yourself, or like you said, to borrow some of those characteristics into your life and use it. Although it doesn't come naturally to you, it's very helpful.
Yes. And I love that framing of it, because it's not comparing yourself to someone else and feeling that you're falling short. It's learning from someone else and implementing some of what you've learned to become a better mom.
That's amazing. So we all try to have this work-life balance, but I think that's the complete wrong way to go about it, because a balance means it's equal and it's not. So I think a nice way to reframe it would be a work-life flow, like taking every day and every person as it comes.
I love that, because who can get balance right?
No, it's like a tightrope, and none of us are trapeze artists or...
And there's so much tension just in that
absolutely
image.
Yeah. So by knowing our personalities, but also our families and our colleagues' personalities, we can definitely make this flow happen by choosing harmony over perfection.
Yes, absolutely. I think flow, being in flow, really is an invitation for us to become present, right? So to get out of our heads and our to-do lists and tasks. Because to be in flow says something about being aware of what's needed in this moment, what is needed of me in this moment, and to also be aware of that inner prompt, to be quiet enough to hear the inner nudges, sometimes subtle and sometimes not so subtle, that guides us. Because we don't know what's going to happen from the 1 minute to the next when we're momming and working. And I think being in flow is a much better goal to strive for than being in balance. Sometimes you have your full-on ambitious working days, and some days it's just a messy bun and pajama day. And the wisdom to know when to flow with what's presenting in the moment is valuable.
What you just said is so profound, and I think so many moms need to hear that. Thanks for that. I want to move back to the powerful woman in her 40s that I mentioned earlier. So the shift from surviving to thriving, does that come from a place of self-awareness, or is it something that would unfold naturally over time?
It is probably a bit of both, because life experience brings with it a lot of stuff that helps us to become more self-aware. But I like how James Hollis describes it. The first half of life is about getting. It's getting success and achievement and security and identity. But then we move into the second half of life, and we shift to giving of our presence and our wisdom and our more authentic selves to the world. And I think a woman in her 40s, she's handled the chaos and dealt with all the ups and downs of those first 2 decades, and now she's at a place where she's unstoppable because she's not trying to please everyone anymore. She's not finding power in being who everybody else needs her to be, but she's finding that power now within herself, within owning who she is. And I think that makes us really powerful.
That's incredible. So shame and fear and not knowing what to do next, the situations that our kids put us in, that's almost like the key that unlocks our true potential.
That's true.
Like almost like the gold I mentioned before. We go through this turmoil and we emerge stronger and powerful, but would we have been the same people if we didn't have kids?
I wonder. I mean, there's this person who used to say, you can think you're a nice person until you have children. Because they show you. I mean, there's nothing as triggering as a toddler with a strong will or a teenager with their own opinions. I mean, they just press all the buttons.
All the buttons.
And we either have to grow and live up to the task, or we get stuck and there's a disconnect in our relationship.
I agree 100%. I do believe that my kids formed me into who I am today. They differ a lot, and I think that both of them have brought out emotions and characteristics in me that never would have emerged if I didn't go through this journey with them.
Yeah, I agree. I have the same thing. I do think I would have been nicer had I not had children. But yeah, no, they are our biggest teachers.
Absolutely. So when something like embarrassment or fear of failure loses its power over us, we see people actually chasing that dream or pursuing personal passions that they've never done before. Is this something you see in your clients?
Oh, absolutely. I think people who lose that fear of what others will think of me, they go for it. They make the changes. They change careers, or they go back to study, or they finally spend time on themselves. And it's amazing to see how people step into their power. And I think that's when you truly start living, when you get to that point.
Yeah, like stepping into the person you were meant to be.
Yes.
So for a mom listening today who wants to use the Enneagram not just as a personality test, but as a guide to this transformation we've been unpacking today, what are her next steps?
What they could do is start using the Enneagram as a roadmap, not as a label, to not identify with that personality type, and rather see how they can expand beyond the perspectives that they default to. And yeah, we do that in True Colours community. We get together once a month and I do a training about the Enneagram and the different aspects of the Enneagram, because this is the depth of the ocean if you want to dig into it. And then we work on it together throughout the month, and then we get together again 2 weeks later for sharing and exploration and question session. I call it fireside chats, where we just sit and talk about this and our experience of life. And the idea is to make the Enneagram come alive and live with it. Recognize your patterns, catch yourself being in your type in order to increase your self-awareness, and just know when you are responding in a way that's a default way, that's an automated kind of autopilot way, to realize that's what I'm doing now. Take a moment and just pick something else, make a better choice. And in that way, you live life just a lot more intentionally. You're not guided by your own whims and default way of being. You're actually making conscious decisions about the way that you want to be in the world. and the life that you want to create for yourself and your family.
That makes me so excited. I feel so inspired, and I'm sure many of our listeners would be too. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your passion with us today. I'm 100% sure that many of our listeners will benefit so much from what you shared.
Thank you.
And this brings us to the final 5. It's 5 questions that I ask every single guest on Moments. Celeste, which part of your HX or human experience has been changed the most by being a mom?
I think in terms of just knowing my triggers.
Okay.
I'm more aware of what gets to me and what I need to do to grow, because they know when to push those buttons.
They definitely do, mine too. So, looking back, what would you do differently?
I wish I studied the Enneagram earlier, or at least started with my own journey and doing the work earlier, because I first told other people what to do before I actually started doing it myself. And I think I would have just been a more present mom if I did that. I am in my head a lot, and I think if I did that differently, I would have probably just been more present.
Presence is definitely something that I think a lot of us struggle with,
Yeah.
because we work and we don't have a lot of support at home. We have to kind of wear all the hats.
Yeah.
So I think it's also important to have a lot of grace with yourself.
Yes, self-compassion and grace.
Definitely. Sure. So what are you most grateful for in your mom journey?
I am fascinated by these 2 humans that were not here before. And I'm so grateful that I get to witness this mystery unfolding right in front of my eyes. It is fascinating, and I'm grateful that I can be a part of that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So your kids are still in primary school, but are you talking about parenting, and what are you telling them about parenting?
We haven't necessarily spoken about parenting, but when my son said the other day that he's not going to be a parent, when we asked him why, he said because it's hard work.
Well, clever boy.
So I think he got that message. I remember when I went to, as an au pair overseas, I went to the Netherlands the year after school because I didn't know what I wanted to study, and the kids were such hard work. I mean, if you want to prevent teenage pregnancies, just let them look after other people's kids.
So what is your North Star when you make parenting decisions?
Oh, choosing one thing. I think to know how to repair well, because I know that I'm not going to make the right decisions all the time. But I've learned, and my kids have taught me this, to apologize and to repair after making mistakes. And when we repair well, it actually builds the relationship more than anything else. And it takes the pressure off. You don't have to do everything right. Yeah.
Celeste, thank you so much for joining me today on Moments. I think what we discussed is very significant, and many people will resonate with what you told us.
Thanks, Madge, and thank you so much for creating this space where you're making us think about our journeys and share a little bit what we know. I'm looking forward to listening to your other guests as well.
Thanks so much. You are stepping into your most powerful, fearless era. Embrace your strengths, own your glow up, and share your journey with others. Thanks for joining us today, and see you next time. Bye.
I was told to sleep when my baby sleeps.
Sibu says at 6 months, baby should be sitting up.
The group chat says their babies sleep through the night.
They say it's important to show control at all times.
Sometimes I wish away the tough times.
Yo, but sometimes I wish I could relive them again and again.